Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/maliciouscompliance, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy some malicious compliance. Won't listen to my warnings? You're the boss. So this was years and years ago, back when I was working as a land surveyor. Basically, what we would do is go out with a laser machine on a tripod and shoot it at a bunch of mirrors on a stick, and because math, that would give us an extremely precise map of an area. My dad was the one who trained me in the trade, and because I have a very analytical mind, and this is basically geometry the job, I had a talent for it. Though, honestly, I wasn't all that fond of the job. Good at it, sure, just not fond. So, one day, with my dad's help, I get put on a survey team with a guy we'll be calling Jay. He was technically the crew chief, which meant he was technically in charge. Jay was a dyed-in-the-wool redneck. He listened to conservative radio, thus forcing me to do the same, drove a beat-up old pickup truck, lived in an apartment complex that somehow had a rusted-out car sitting in its front lawn, and had a stubborn streak Texas tall and fueled by his utter surety that he knew better than every darn person else. I never heard him say anything to confirm it, but if I had seen a Confederate flag on his truck, it would not have been out of place. Jay didn't like me. I loathed him. We would often meet up at 6 AM or even earlier to get equipment loaded and set out on a job. I'm not a morning person. I'm definitely a night owl. And while I'm always awake, alert, and on the ball while on site, the car ride out to the site would often lull me to sleep. Jay hated that. Every time I would, fighting to keep my eyes open while ignoring the constant drone of southern fried conservatism flooding out the radio. Start off to doze off slightly, Jay started screaming his damn head off, telling me to wake up. If he had to be awake, I sure as heck was going to be awake too. 10 minutes of him ranting and he'd finally shut up, only to start over again when my head drooped an hour later. This is an example of Jay's attitude toward pretty much everything. He was right, I was wrong, suggest differently, and he'd hem and haw until you just gave up. So, onto the malicious compliance of this story. We are out on a massive job. We had to survey an entire strip mall complex. One of those deals that takes up an entire block to itself with lots of little alcoves and corners that made sightlines difficult. Lots of setting up, shooting a few points, setting a traverse point, and then breaking it all down again to move to the next point. We knew already we were going to be at it all darn day. So, we broke everything out and got to work. So, as the crew chief, one of Jay's responsibilities was that he would plan our traverses. He would choose the vantage point he thought we could get the most relevant data recorded from, set the traverse, let me shoot it in, and then we would switch positions. I'd set up the instrument and data collector on the traverse. He would get a backsight from our old setup location so the instrument could orientate itself and knew what direction it was facing. And then he would go around with the prism and I'd take the readings. About halfway through this massive job, I've just broken down the instrument and I'm heading to my next traverse when Jay stops me. "Hey, you forgot to shoot in that archway." I should point this out for non-surveyors. You may have noticed as crew chief and prism man, Jay is the one who picks what to shoot in. So, when he says, "you forgot," what he meant was, "I forgot, but I want to shift the blame onto you anyway." Go back to the last point, we need to shoot that in. So, off I go back to where I had just come from. I set up the instrument and get on the walkies. "Hey Jay, I'm dialed in, just need a backsight." "You were just there, you don't need a backsight, just shoot it in." "I can't shoot it in without a backsight. If I don't get the orientation, the rest of the job could be pivoted." Jay has all the swagger, but I doubt he understood 3 whole words of what I just said. He was crew chief on seniority, not an actual mind for the math. Basically, since I had broken it down, the instrument didn't know which direction it was facing. So, it would pick a direction at random and just assume it was facing that way. Which means any points we shot in, including all traverses we shot from that point forward, would be pivoted around that point at random and arbitrary angle. You bleep, shoot what I bleep and tell you to bleep and shoot. Take the shots. So, I shrugged. Technically, he was in charge. He was the one who literally called the shots. He was the one responsible. So, I took the shots and we carried on, with me knowing everything was being increasingly transposed as we carried on. Cut to the end of our day. We had finished up pretty early compared to when we thought we would be getting out. The way we did things is we would shoot the points, then upload them to our company server through a desktop with a mobile modem. This was exclusively my job because Jay was a monkey. He wouldn't know a file repository server mapped to a network drive from his butt. So we packed up all the equipment, get in the truck, and I start uploading our points file. Jay likes to take off from the job site immediately, even though he's supposed to wait for word from our techs confirming they got the points, but by a stroke of luck, he decided today he wanted to relax with a cigarette before we left. Usually, he'd smoke as we drove, but I guess he just wanted to chill. In any case, we're actually on the job site, not on the road, when he gets a call from home office. Jay answers the phone, expecting permission to screw off for the day. Hello? The phone makes muffled muttering sounds. What points? The phone makes more inaudible muttering. I don't understand. What's wrong with them? My ears perk. I know exactly what is wrong with the points. Through straining my hearing and knowing roughly what the tech is about to say, I can barely make out the following. Control points. Over 400 yards. Now, one might be wondering what control points are. Well, dear reader, I shall now edify thee with an explanation. You see, when surveying a large area, standard best practice is to do it in a large loop. You tell the data collector that point 001 is at position 1000, and then collect the other points in relation to that arbitrary point. So, when you circle around the area being surveyed, you collect the position of that first same point again as your last shot, so the techs know roughly what kind of error margin drifted in while you were traversing. And needless to say, when you're dealing with measurements with precision down to a 1,000th of an inch, an error margin of 400 yards is completely unacceptable. Now, what I could have done is ask Jay to let me talk to the tech, informed them that Jay refused to take a backsite at one of the points, and tell them to take all points above point X, pivot them around point Y by Z degrees. All numbers that I had memorized. That would have lined up the control points, compensated for the error completely, and we would have driven home having done a good job. But I couldn't do that, could I? That would have indicated Jay was wrong, and Jay is never wrong. So I held my tongue and tried not to smirk. Jay refuses to believe our points are wrong. OP must have uploaded them wrong. Idiot. Do it again and do it right this time. Of course, it's my fault. It was always my fault in Jay's opinion. So, I uploaded the points again and the tech informed him that the points are still off. Jay seizes the laptop. 20 minutes of the monkey stabbing at the keyboard ensues with him having to get the very patient tech to guide him step by step through the incredibly simple process of dragging and dropping the points file into his... yeah. And again, the tech informs him the points are wrong. He is incensed. So, Minutes later, we're piling out of the truck and grabbing all the equipment again so we can set back up the point Jay messed up on. With a backsight this time, go figure. And reshoot every single point in the back half of the job we just completed. I didn't mind. I was being paid to watch Jay curse and fume and whine at me about us both knowing I was the one who had warned him about the issue. Of course, he keeps blaming me for the mess up, but I just take that as an occupational bonus. In the end, Jay got bawled out by the big boss for wasting company time and money. My dad told me his check got docked for the screw up. Me? I got overtime. After all, Jay was the one responsible for the accuracy of the data. I was just the monkey pushing buttons on the instrument. Some people just have too much hubris, don't they? They just need to tone it down and get down to earth with everybody else. A Richard and his pens. During college, I was a cybersecurity engineering intern at a government agency, which I'll call agency that's super secret, ASS. ASS used many defense contractors, including one we'll call Lockheed Martin. Contrary to popular belief, Marquette and other big contractor engineers are generally just as bad as, and often worse than, government engineers. But I digress. One such bad Lockheed engineer was a guy we'll call Richard. Because, well, he's a Richard. You see, Richard loved to inform his government employee counterparts about his much higher contractor salary, his fancy car, and his PhD from MIT. It's a running joke in the industry that PhDs can't code, but with Richard, it was true. He couldn't use a Git/version control, exclusively used Cold Fusion for database work, and he wanted to use JavaScript for back-end services. For our less technical readers, he isn't the best programmer on the poo-poo platter. Despite this, Lockheed was able to bill him at a nutso rate because of his PhD and 10 years experience. And thus, the gears of the military-industrial complex rolled on, casually messing over taxpayers as it went. Anyway, everyone hates Richard, but everyone particularly hated his fancy pens, which he wouldn't shut up about. He requisitioned them from the government and they delivered to his desk the overpriced ink dispensers about 3 months later. I did say it was the government. Because there was a 3-month lead time, Richard had to order in advance, lest he need to use normal pens like us non-PhD plebs. Well, one time, the administrative assistant who had received some unwanted attention from Richard received a box full of fancy pens for delivery. It turns out Richard had run out of ink just the day before and this delivery was perfectly timed. But you see, Richard made a critical mistake. Instead of writing fancy pens or box of fancy pens on the order form, Richard wrote fancy pens box. And so, the assistant dutifully distributed all of Richard's fancy pens to everyone else on the team and left the empty box on his desk for when he returned from lunch. Of course, Richard's shriek of anguish upon opening the long-awaited box of pens and finding it empty was priceless, as was the argument he had with the administrative assistant. So too was watching him refile the order form, presumably realizing he'd have to spend 3 whole months without his precious little pens. But the moment I will always cherish, the piece de la resistance if you will, is when Richard trudged to the office supply cabinet, sighed as he selected a really bad Papermate pen, and turned around to see all of his co-workers dutifully scribbling away, fancy pens in hand. This guy definitely sounds like one of those people to have a bonsai tree on his desk, and every time his assistant walks in he just screams at them. Basically a Richard, yeah. $250 to turn on a power strip. I used to own an all-around tech company. We did it all. Well, my team did. A lot of our work was sales and tech support. We had a contract with a bank in 5 Points, Atlanta, that had issues about every single weekend. We got a nice bump in pay for any weekend trips to fix their nonsense. Yes, it was always nonsense. This is just the story that sticks out in my head the most. So, it was around Saturday in the late 2000s, around 2008 I think. We get a call that the main teller station won't turn on. Knowing these people, I asked her to check and make sure everything was plugged in and that the power strip was on, etc. The teller told me she already checked all of that and she's not stupid. Well, I inform her that being a weekend, that if I show up it was going to be a $250 charge no matter what the issue was, base charge. She told me to get off my butt and hurry up. So, I roll into the bank and the first thing I did was push the power button just to make sure it didn't boot. Sure enough, it doesn't. So then, I notice, this dumb woman has her purse on the power strip connected to the computer. I move it. Sure as heck, the darn thing is off. I flip the switch, press the power button, and boom, what do you know, it lives. Side note, all of our calls were taped, so I played the tape for the bank manager the next day. This poor sap was getting hosed every other weekend and it seemed for stupid service calls like this. Needless to say, the teller who messed up had to pay for this call or she was going to get fired. Oh yeah, I checked that. I'm not an idiot. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching and I will see you very soon.